This is Edge of the Box, a podcast brought to you by WhoScored.com.
Hello, welcome back to the Edge of the Box podcast, a podcast by WhoScored.com, proudly sponsored by BetVictor. We've got a bonus episode for you today, and I'm joined as ever by WhoScored Martin Laurence and Jonathan Wilson to review the group stage. And I won't say it's been the most exciting group stage, Jonathan, but I felt like last night was very exciting.
Oh, I think it's been pretty good. I think it's certainly been a lot better than France 5 years ago.
True.
I think there's that one duff day, the day of England-Scotland. There was three pretty grim games that day. Yeah. But I think, and I don't like the format. I think there's too little jeopardy in these final group games, and yet somehow we did still have great drama. And yesterday, probably was the best day. It was sort of a nice slow build. That Sweden-Poland game went a bit weird in the second half, having looked very comfortable for Sweden, and then incredible climax last night.
Yeah, Martin, but like Jonathan says, it could have been even more exciting last night if only the top two went through. That group, it was a real, like a mind boggler last night. At times you didn't know who England were going to be playing, but imagine if like one of Portugal could have possibly gone out. Germany could have gone out finishing third. That would have been even more exciting.
Yeah, I think they said at one stage Portugal were in every position in the table, weren't they? I think they were first, second, third and fourth throughout the night, which is crazy. Imagine that as a Portugal fan sitting through that. It's bad enough as a neutral. It was good fun. But yeah, luckily that last group made that sort of the format sort of a bit redundant. There was plenty of drama there. I feel really sorry for the Hungarians, who I think, to their credit, were really, really good throughout the group stage.
Yeah, really good.
The 3-0 defeat to Portugal was very harsh. They held them out for most of the game, didn't they? So they could have come away from that group with 3 draws against those teams. That's remarkable. For me, even though they went out, they're the surprise package of the tournament for me. I know they're organised and they had a good record going in, but completely written off, weren't they? Most people would have predicted to get 0 points. Only got 2, but yeah, they pushed all of them. So they were great value, and I think obviously they weren't in Budapest. Bucharest. Yeah, obviously they weren't in Budapest last night, but even that drama, them at the stadium watching the France-Portugal game and hearing the goals going in, it was great fun. So yeah, I feel sorry for them because they really deserve to go through, really, a lot more than some of the teams that did manage to scrape it.
I mean, after what's been happening to me on this podcast the last few shows, I really hope your lack of geography knowledge gets left in all clipped up and put on social media.
I got it right and then doubted myself.
Right, you've spoke there about the surprise package, and we're gonna have a little brief reassessment and try and make some new shouts here, I think. So, who has been the surprise package for you so far, Jonathan?
Well, I guess it depends how you define surprise package. So the Dutch have been much, much better than I expected. Mm-hmm. That's certainly true. I really thought there was a significant chance they might not finish top of that group. And I guess once they got away with it against Ukraine, and they did wobble in that game quite badly, I suppose they were always going to make it. Italy have been. I mean, I knew they were good, but I perhaps didn't realise that they were quite this good. But I mean, that feels like picking big sides. Sweden. I suppose Sweden did exactly what you expected them to do, but they just sort of did it a bit better than I expected them to do it. Defended very deep, defended very well, particularly that Spain game. And I think they could be awkward. I mean, they got Ukraine, haven't they, in the last 16, and then winners of England, Germany, I think, in the quarterfinal. Mm-hmm. So I mean, you can imagine, England's revenge for 96 and 90 is then followed by Sweden's revenge for 2018, and suddenly we end up with a quite dull Sweden side in the semi-final, and it's all incredibly anticlimactic. But they clearly are a threat. Denmark, again, I think we sort of expected them to be good. They've obviously had a whole number of other things going on, but it's the way they've played in the last 2 games. They've been much more attacking than I expected them to be. Kind of forced on them by circumstance. But they now look really, potentially very threatening. So I don't think there's been any of the sort of minnows who've really stood out other than Hungary. And I guess with Hungary, it's not just the fact they've defended very well. is that combination of Sholai and Salai up front has I think been exceptional, and the fact that they arguably their best performance came away from Budapest. That they proved it wasn't just having 55,000 fans behind them. So there's only really been, I guess, 4 or 5 disappointing teams. But are we going to come on to that, or should I talk about that now?
Yeah, no, go for it.
Well, I mean, Turkey obviously have been awful.
Yeah.
And I was one of a lot of people who looked at their qualifying record, looked at their results over the last couple of years. I saw bits of that 3-3 draw against Germany. You look at the team; it's full of bright young players. Plus, in Burak Yilmaz, a centre forward who's had a great season. You looked at the 2 centre backs, and you thought of Demirel and Soyuncu, and you thought, yeah, that's a good solid base. All the ingredients were there for them to be good, and they're absolutely awful. I mean, a record as bad as Ireland in 2012, which is pretty bad. And they didn't even get to sort of sing Fields of Athenry mournfully while carrying Chief Executive of their FA down the street without his shoes on. Scotland, I think, were overpraised for 0-0 draw, and
great,
pretty disappointing. I mean, they didn't play badly against the Czechs, but failing to win that game, or failing to even get a point from that game, was problematic, and they were outplayed by Croatia, who had been a disappointment up till that game. I thought, I mean, maybe the second half against the Czechs they played all right, but certainly the first 3 halves they played in the tournament, they were poor. Finland, awkward for them the way the first game went, but they did win it, so to give them credit for that. Russia were poor, but I think we expected them to be pretty poor. Ukraine haven't quite lived up to expectations, but they have gone through, so there's still time. And North Macedonia, I think they proved the value, although they didn't get a point. They proved the value of that tweak to the qualification, so that Minnow can get there. Because I'd much rather have an informed Minnow than Slovakia. Let's be honest. That's
going to say the exact same thing. Anyone but Slovakia.
Yeah, I mean, I just never watched a Slovakia game where I haven't been tearing my eyeballs out after about 15 minutes.
No.
And I couldn't work out what they were doing. They were playing essentially with 2 false nines, but nobody making breaks from midfield. So who were Duda and Hamšík making space for? I don't know what the plan was. It wasn't that it was a plan that didn't work or a plan that went wrong. I just couldn't work out what they're even trying to do. And then there was, I mean, this is very self-indulgent, but I wrote that in my match report on the Slovakia-Sweden game, which then caused a huge stir in Slovakia. And the Slovakian paper then rang me up and interviewed me and ran a 2,500 word interview of me just going, God, Slovakian football is really boring. And Poland did what Poland always do, which is come with a bit of promise and somehow not quite deliver. And sort of go home sort of thinking, well, they've been a bit unlucky there. Because certainly they were the better side against Slovakia until the red card.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to go into there from what you've said. But Martin, I presume you've got Turkey down as the disappointment. I can't remember if you came on and like made them a dark horse or something before the tournament started, but they've actually won me some money in the sweepstake by being the worst team, I think.
Oh, nice.
You'd have never ever said that was going to happen.
No. Yeah, no, I had them to finish second in that group. That was my sort of pre-tournament prediction. I thought they'd finish second. So yeah, massively underwhelming. Just did not turn up. I think that a game against Italy where they were completely outclassed, they just never bounced back from it because they tried to just sit in that game and it was never going to last for that long. And yeah, they just never seemed to sort of recover. So yeah, they were terrible. I was going to say, obviously, Jonathan's gone through the vast majority there, but yeah, I was going to mention Ukraine as well, actually, just because I think Jonathan and I both said we thought they had a decent chance of topping that group above Netherlands. And while they have scraped through, they'd be the team that you'd say are probably the most fortunate to do that.
I mean, to be fair to them, it's only really the Austria game where they were poor. They played pretty well against the Dutch and it could have gone the other way. Yeah. I mean, they had a bad 20 minutes just after half time. Yeah. And then the North Macedonia game was, I mean, it wobbled a bit as North Macedonia came back at them, but yeah, they were the better team there.
Yeah. But just to, obviously they've only got through on the basis of a win over North Macedonia at the end of the day. So that doesn't matter. They're through. But yeah, like Jonathan says, I expected them to beat Austria personally, and they were nowhere near it. They should have lost by more probably. So yeah, maybe them as well in terms of a sort of underachiever so far, but one that's gone through regardless.
Yeah, I had Turkey as my underachiever, as my what was the surprise package? I can feel Jonathan glaring at me now. I did put Netherlands down just because I just didn't think they'd be as good as they are, but it does depend on what your definition of a surprise package is. Martin, we'll stay with you for surprise player so far.
I guess not really a surprise, but I've really enjoyed Alexander Isak for Sweden so far. He's been obviously in a very sort of practical, pragmatic team. He's been a bright spark, and I think that's why he stood out even more, because those around him are sort of more pragmatic. Dumfries for the Netherlands has been really bright. And just I've got a bit of a rogue one, but Danny Ward for Wales has had a very
killing my team here that I've done my best 11.
Yeah,
going through my whole team. Yeah,
yeah. Danny Ward I went for just because obviously it wasn't certain that he had started and so on. It hasn't played any football for ages for his club, and yeah, he's been really, really good. He certainly earned them the point against the Swiss that essentially set up their progression to the next round, and he was good in both games after that. So yeah, I've just got Danny Ward as a bit of a rogue one.
Yeah, I mean, we spoke about him in the last podcast. I think I've got Spinazzola down. I've just loved Italy's energy, and I think he's been a massive part of that. But we did speak about him quite a lot in the last podcast. Jonathan, who have you got?
Yeah, I mean, Dumfries and Spinazzola were on my list, but Damsgaard for Denmark, who almost certainly wouldn't have played if Eriksen had been available. But he's, I think, given them an extra energy. He's given them somebody who can carry the ball. Yeah, very tricky feet. You're sort of just waiting for him to win a penalty in that Belgium game. Just sort of assumed that at some point Alderweireld would clip his ankle. So I mean, he's a player who, to be honest, I didn't know a huge amount about, but he's really, really impressed me. And again, just a player who I couldn't honestly tell you anything about him, but Danielsson for Sweden, I think, has been really good. He got a little bit clumsy against Poland yesterday and got himself booked kind of needlessly late on. But apart from that, I think in a very solid Swedish setup, he's been very good. And then another Swede, just again a player who I've seen a lot, but he's never really done anything other than little flickers when I've been watching him. But Emil Forsberg, who, I mean, obviously is a good player. I mean, but it's just somebody you get those players who they never quite do it when you're watching them. And suddenly against Poland yesterday, 2 brilliant finishes. And he got the penalty against Slovakia and was one of the brighter players, and maybe the only bright player apart from Isak in a desperately, desperately awful game.
Let's talk now about biggest disappointments, Martin. Bruno Fernandes?
What, as a player? Potentially, but I think obviously we touched on it last week in terms of just looking really, really tired. I think another one we touched on last week, and you don't want to sort of gang up on them, but I think you'd have to consider Harry Kane in there as well, just because he was joint favourite, I think, for the Golden Boot, and that was based on the fact that he was going to score all these goals in the group stage. He's had one shot on target. So yeah, he's obviously been disappointing by his standards. Even Kylian Mbappe as well. I know he played very well in that Germany game and had that goal disallowed, but he's looked bright throughout, but he's always going to look bright just because of his skill set and his traits, but his finishing's been a bit off, and yeah, he's certainly not been the standout player for France. I think that's been Paul Pogba personally, who's had a really good tournament other than that Hungary game where they sort of nullified him. And I think that's the issue for if you're playing against France. I think that's what you've got to actually stop. You've got to stop the supply rather than stop Mbappe, Benzema. You've really got to stop Pogba because he's pulled the strings in 2 of the games so far.
Jonathan, who have you got down?
Yeah, I mean, I had Mbappe, Kane. I mean, I was Foden as well from an England point of view, which maybe is not entirely fair on Foden because I don't think he's been used in the best way. Sancho, just because we haven't seen him, and I sort of thought he would have quite a good tournament. So I think there's quite a few England players you could choose. Portugal, just sort of generally, I think they're we talked before the time about their fleet of attacking midfielders. Well, none of them have played well. So Bernardo Silva, I think, as well. But that's it feels to me a systemic failure. And I think that's one of those cases where Ronaldo scores loads of goals, but also causes them problems. And they were pretty lucky to go through in the end. So, I mean, there's time for all of them to do something brilliant and make us look a bit silly. But I think none of them have performed particularly well.
No, I think they're all fair shouts, I would say. What we're going to do now is we're going to pick a team of the group stages. So Jonathan and myself have picked what we think with our eyes have been the best 11 of the Euros so far. And Martin, I believe you've got the Who Scored best 11 there too in front of you. So what's your system, Martin, before we start?
What's our system? What do you mean?
The formation. What's the formation?
Oh, what's the formation? Right, okay.
Yeah.
In ours, we've got a 4-3-3 in the Who Scored team.
That's good because I'm playing 4-3-3 as well.
Yeah, me too.
That's good. So we can go through individually then.
Yeah, I toyed with the back three, but I couldn't justify playing an extra centre back over a midfielder.
No.
Yeah, I think one of the things we've seen in this tournament, if you're looking for sort of tactical lessons of the group stage, is a slightly artificial notion because things will be turned on their head by the knockouts. But essentially, apart from Italy and the Dutch, nobody's really had attacking fullbacks without playing a back three. That it feels that at international level, coaches sort of feel that either you have to have a fullback sit deeper than they would in the club game, or you have to stick in an extra centre back. And playing a 4-3-3 with attacking fullbacks, apart from Italy and the Dutch, seems to be something that they've steered away from.
Yeah, I think that's valid on the fullbacks. It's not actually easy to pick this 11. I thought it would be quite easy, but I actually really struggled with it when I sat down to do it quite late last night after leaving it till the last minute. But yeah, I found it quite a hard task. So who's the Who Scored goalkeeper, Martin?
This was always going to be the case, I think, after that first game when he got such a wild rating. We discussed it in the first episode or the second episode. Lucas Hradecky, who it would have looked fair, I think, up until that really unfortunate own goal. He was playing really, really well in that Belgian game. And then, just really unlucky, really, for that own goal that eventually sort of knocked him out. But yeah, Lucas Hradecky is our goalkeeper with a 7.53. No one came particularly close, to be honest. Like I said, I would have Ward if I was doing a team personally. But the other ones that were in contention before the last game were Robin Olsen. He was excellent against Spain. Didn't have a save to make against Slovakia, though, so that brings him down from a statistical standpoint. So, yeah, Hradecky in goal for us.
I picked Danny Ward as my goalkeeper. I think he's been really good for Wales in the two games of their three that I've seen, and I've watched the highlights back of the one I didn't see, but I just think he looks really astute. Someone who hasn't played loads of football this season, I think he's coming in, looked really solid and actually calmed Wales down a bit. Mm-hmm. Jonathan, who's your keeper?
Well, there's basically two positions where I couldn't decide, and goalkeeper's one of them. So having been quite critical of Hradecky in that first sort of half hour against Denmark, I think he has actually been really good since, and the own goal is not his fault at all. So Hradecky I had down, Sommer from Switzerland. I know he let in 3 against Italy, but made some very good saves, and Robin Olsen as well. So I'm quite happy to go with Hradecky. I suspect he won't survive to the end of the tournament. Although he won't be making mistakes, I guess, in the knockout stage.
Won't be making saves either.
So yeah, it's sort of it's. I guess the problem is that the keepers for the bigger nations don't really get a chance to prove themselves to the group stage. Yeah. But yeah, Hradecky, Sommer, or Olsen.
I did consider Pickford. He hasn't had loads to do, but I think what he has had to do, he's done quite well. But yeah, I think Danny Ward's been
and he is from Sunderland. Let's not forget that.
Yeah, that's always something that comes into your thinking when you.
He's just good around the camp as well.
Right then, right backs. I've got a feeling we might all have the same right back. He's already been mentioned in the show. Is Denzel Dumfries yours, Martin? Well, not yours. Who scored?
Yeah, he is Who Scored and mine for what it's worth. Yeah, Denzel Dumfries. He's been just been a constant threat, hasn't he? I think he's one of those players who people will be looking at after this tournament. He's always carried an attacking threat, to be fair, at club level as well. There's been a few question marks about him defensively, but he's been good at both ends so far. So yeah, he's the right back.
Jonathan, were there any Sunderland natives to choose, or did you go for Dumfries as well?
Well, the only other player I really considered was Joshua Kimmich, but I think you'd have to play a back three. Well, you wouldn't, because obviously he plays right back at times for Bayern. But in this tournament, he's played as a wing back. But we're playing a back four, and Germany's defending has been so haphazard that I'm very reluctant to include a German defender.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it has to be Dumfries, with the caveat that the Dutch haven't really played any good yet.
No. Full house then for Denzel Dumfries. Left back on the Who Scored team, Martin.
It's that man, Spinazzola. For what it's worth, I had one that was close, and that would be Joachim Mæhle. Denmark, who's actually a natural right back, but particularly in the last game against Russia, he was superb. So I'd have him as close, but Spinazzola in the Who Scored team.
Yeah, he was in my team as well. Jonathan?
Yeah, exactly the same.
See, this is good.
Jonathan agreeing with the Who Scored team.
Yeah,
so far. This is off the chart, really.
It's good for my morale, and it's good for Who Scored's morale as well. As usually, Who Scored get a slating from us.
It's not great debate, though, is it?
No, let's all agree on the entire team.
Yeah,
I don't think we will, for what it's worth.
Maybe it'll get interesting now. I can tell you definitely won't agree with one in my front three from what's been said already. The centre back pairing, then I've gone a bit Mike Bassett. I've gone a bit British. I've gone for Joe Rodon and John Stones as my centre back pairing. This was where I struggled to pick centre halves, to be honest. Jonathan, who did you pick?
I went Bonucci and Varane. Part of me wanted to pick an England player just because I think England haven't quite had the credit they deserve for defending so well in the group stage. I mean, to go through a group stage without conceding is very difficult. There's only England and Italy did it. England haven't done it in a major tournament since 1966. But I also sort of feel they haven't really been tested, and there were signs in that Scotland game that made me nervous. Bonucci, I think, has been magnificent, obviously very good on the ball as well. And Varane, after a pretty ropey club season, I think along with Pogba, has probably been France's best player so far. That he's looked pretty assured. Little wobble against Portugal last night, but it was a slightly strange game. So I'm prepared to forgive him that. So yeah, I've gone Bonucci and Varane. At least that's one, natural right and left-sided player as well.
Nice. Yes, it's always important when you're doing these things, as we know, Jonathan. Yeah. As I say, I struggled with centre halves already, but I think Wales are overachieving. I think Rodon's a big part of how solid they've looked, like Ward, and 3 clean sheets for England. So I put Stones in. What are Who Scored saying?
So again, the centre backs were the ones that are tough, really, and because it's a statistical rating, we've got 2 players that actually only started 2 of the games. One of them is Matthijs de Ligt, who obviously came in after that Ukraine game and has really solidified the Netherlands, I think.
Oh, sorry, I should have said de Ligt was on my shortlist. So de Ligt, Danielson and Skriniar were the others I had on the list.
We're looking all right then. We're looking all right. Matthijs de Ligt, like I said, come in, not faced a really tough opposition yet, it should be said. But I think he's been really, really solid. And the other one is actually Dedrick Boyata. From a statistical standpoint, he started both games. He started against Russia and against Finland, and obviously Belgium were pretty untested in those games, kept clean sheets in both. But the game that he missed was the Denmark game, where they defensively, at least, Belgium fell apart a bit. They conceded 21 shots in that game, so it wasn't a surprise to see him come back in against Finland. He's got a 97.7% pass accuracy from around 200 passes, I think. So he's just not giving the ball away, not made any mistakes, kept 2 clean sheets, cleared the ball well enough as well. So he's for a player that's sort of questioned a lot in this country, at least, because he never made the grade at City. Boyata's there for us with a 7.26. There were a few that were close. Skriniar dropped out because of that last game. It was Skriniar, but
that was he was on my shortlist before that game. I should have said that.
And then, he was there, but he dropped well out, obviously, because that was a capitulation, wasn't it?
Yeah, couldn't bring myself to put a Belgium centre half in just because they've had the same centre backs for the last 27 tournaments, and I can't get my head around how they seem to have the same centre backs whatever the year is, and they will do probably for the next tournament.
Well, and also they play a back 3, which is very different to playing a back 4, particularly when they're as old as that.
Yeah, they also don't play the back 3 the way I would, which will come out. It's not for this show. not one to talk about. Martin, has the Who Scored team got a designated sitting midfielder?
Not particularly, but 2 sort of relatively deep lying, 2 that you could certainly put in a double pivot, I guess. Neither of them So Locatelli is in our team, and he's a solid ball winner, so he'd probably sit at the base, even though he sort of stood out for the 2 goals that he scored. Locatelli makes it just ahead of Jorginho for what it's worth. obviously Locatelli dropped out, and the question is, does Locatelli start or does Barella start moving forwards? Because Verratti's now back. Personally, I think it may well be Locatelli because he is more defensive than Barella. And moving into this latter stage, obviously Italy are going to face tougher teams now. So maybe it'll be Barella against Austria, and then beyond that, I wouldn't be surprised to see Locatelli start a couple more games in this tournament at all. Alongside him, I touched on him in the last show, Frenkie de Jong. He's our third highest rated player so far. He's just been so effortless really so far. But again, with the Dutch, modest opposition. So that's the two sort of in the sort of deeper lying midfield roles. And then Kevin De Bruyne completes the three, even though he's only played a game and a half, but he's been in those games, he's just been outstanding. Like he won the game against Denmark, basically, and obviously pulled the strings against a very sort of modest Finland team. But his rating's insane from us. I think he's got 5.3 dribbles per 90, like even more key passes per game. He's got a goal, 2 assists already. So could have had 3 assists for that Lukaku goal that got disallowed as well, which was never offside in my opinion. So yeah, he completes our midfield. The question is, has he played enough minutes? But we just did it on minimum of 2 appearances. So he makes it great.
He was in my first draft of the team, and he's become my 12th man in the end, my first sub. I just couldn't justify putting someone in who'd only started 1 game, so that's why I didn't put him in. I've actually gone for Jorginho in front of the back four. He impresses me so much whenever I watch him play anyway, just how clever he is on the ball and off the ball, I think. And then in front of him, I've gone for Wijnaldum, and I've gone for Pogba. I think Pogba's passing was a joke last night, an absolute joke. So I think that midfield's got a decent kind of balance to it. Jonathan, what's yours?
Yeah, I mean, I went for Jorginho at the back of midfield. I think the only player, because I slightly disagree about positions there in terms of Locatelli and De Jong. So Jorginho is the sort of screen in front of the back four. I think the only other player, and I fear this is sort of because of my knowledge of how good he is rather than because of how well he's played in the tournament, the only other player I considered was Kante. But I think on this tournament alone, Jorginho. Then as the creative player in the 3, De Bruyne, without question. I thought, yes, the Denmark game, absolutely sensational. The game against Finland was a slightly odd game, but it was him and Lukaku were the 2 who were actually driving things forward. And then the sort of shuttling player between those 2, this was the other position where I really struggled to kind of narrow it down. I mean, it's a short list of people we've already mentioned: Locatelli, De Jong, and Pogba. De Jong, I guess I rule out just because they haven't really played much so far. Locatelli or Pogba, I don't know, to be honest. Let's say Locatelli. So Jorginho, Locatelli, and De Bruyne.
Nice. I mean, all these teams are good, aren't they? It's just, I suppose, it comes down to interpretation of what's happened in the game so far and the way you weigh things out. Who's your front 3, Jonathan? We'll stay with you.
Lukaku is a centre forward, without question. Scores goals, but does a huge amount more as well. Yeah, just an incredible sort of package of a centre forward. You're big and physical, but also good on the ball. Movement really intelligent. The second goal against Denmark, what he does in the build up to that goal. I think he's the 4th last Belgian player to touch the ball, might be the 3rd last. But there's sort of a 15-second package where he does everything a centre forward could be asked to do. So he chases lost cause into the corner. He outmuscles the defender. He turns back, uses technical skill with his feet to create space, and then picks the pass. So it's just everything. I mean, he doesn't score the goal, obviously, but in terms of hold-up play and running into a corner and technical ability and the intelligence to find to wait and play the pass at the right time, I think he's obviously had an extraordinary season with Inter, but he's carried that form forward. And against Finland in that sort of in the first half, you could sort of see he was, there's sort of 21 players, maybe De Bruyne I wouldn't quite include in this, but 21 players who were sort of quite happy to play at 60% pace because they knew a draw worked for both teams. And there's Lukaku, charging about, clearly desperate to get the golden boot. And then either side of him, Damsgaard, who I've already mentioned, who, as I say, a player I didn't know a huge amount about, but great dribbler. I think he's given Denmark a new aspect. And then Insigne on the other flank. I think Italy have been by some way the most impressive team of the first round. And I think he's probably been the best of the three forwards that, coming in onto his right foot. Has been a huge threat. And you sort of imagine him and De Bruyne linking quite nicely down that left side. So yeah, front three of Damsgaard, Lukaku and Insigne.
Tell you what, Jonathan, you have forced me into a change. The way you've just spoke about Lukaku. Again, he's in my first draft, and then I took him out, and I'm looking at it and thinking, what on earth did I do that for? What's wrong with me? So yeah, he's my centre forward now. And then I've got.
So who did you take out?
Who have you cut? Who's been ruthlessly cut based on Jonathan's?
I don't condone bullying on the show, but I think I may deserve some bullying here. I just like.
You haven't put Ollie Watkins, have you?
No. He didn't quite make it in. I just love watching Mbappe. I get what Martin said earlier on in the show, but I just think he's the most fun player to watch. And when I'm sitting down and watching him, I've got a smile on my face and I find him fun. So football should be fun.
But why play him wide then? Why didn't you play him off Lukaku?
No, he was wide, but my three was a bit fluid anyway. But I just think now what you've said about Lukaku, I'm putting Lukaku in and I'm taking Mbappe out.
Okay.
Jurgi Löw, are you going to bring him back in for the group stage? For the knockout, sorry.
He was so close to being in anyway. He's won me some money with Bet Victor so far in this tournament as well. He does deserve to be in there.
Think of the poor lad's confidence. And Mbappe just doesn't know where he stands.
He'll come back. He's young. He's got time to get over this blow. I'm sure. And then flanking Lukaku, I'm not sure who's playing what side. Probably Ronaldo. I've got Ronaldo on the left because he's the top scorer. Don't think he's doing a fat lot, but he's putting the ball in the net and he can take a penalty.
Just drop him for Mbappe. He doesn't do anything. He just stands there and gets in the way. He's ruined Portugal's midfield.
He might win the Golden Boot, though.
Yeah, but so what? Yeah.
No, I've got to be strong. I can't have you influence me.
I was going to say you're going to get it.
Think about it. Think about a Golden Boot.
Yeah.
And if you wore that, think how that would weigh you down and make you a worse footballer. And that's exactly what's happening to Portugal. Yeah, his pursuit of Ali Dai's record through penalties, through standing around on the penalty spot, doing no defensive work. That's what's destroying this Portugal team. I can't believe you let it destroy your own team. And he doesn't play wide. You can't play him wide. Drop him from Mbappe.
No, I can't, Jonathan. I can't. I want to listen to you, but I can't do it. And then I've got Depay as my third member of my front three. Probably now the only reasonable pick that I've done. Martin, what have you got?
Yeah.
Well, who scored?
Got the exact same as you, Dan.
Really?
Not sure if you like that or not. Yeah, so Lukaku leading the line. I think Antonio Conte deserves a huge amount of credit for bringing on Lukaku's game in the way that he has. Obviously left United confidence pretty low, loads of question marks about his hold-up play, his touch. And he's so good at that now. He's incredible at that now. And what I love about Lukaku, and we see it so often, and we saw it in the goal against Finland that stood, is that he just pins defenders. And it's almost like basketball. He gets a ball into him, pins a defender, and it's almost like a fadeaway shot in basketball. Just turns, shoots, and it's going in. It like every time. He's just such a bully to those defenders. That he's just been class. We do have Ronaldo in the front three. Any statistical system, 5 goals and an assist in 3 games. Any sort of rating system is always going to be the case. Like I said, I wouldn't necessarily agree with it in my personal team.
I tell you, if he's playing on the left, is he for you?
He is for me, yeah.
Because my right back is going to have such fun. He's just going to be bombing up and down that flank.
Denzel Dumfries as well. What a night he's going to have. Yeah, so we've got Ronaldo. Like I said, 6 goal involvements in 3 games. It's always going to be hard to shake him out of a team in the tournament based on sort of statistics. And then, yeah, Memphis Depay completes the front 3. Couple of goals and an assist for him. Been very bright. But, yeah, like Jonathan says, and I've said as well, not really come up against much yet. So we'll see how they develop through the tournament.
You can only be what's in front of you, I guess.
Exactly.
Good segment for Lukaku there. He's passed the Wilson eye test and statistically getting in the team. That's a lovely little 5 minutes for Romelu Lukaku there.
Oh, he'll be delighted. That'll have made his year.
Yeah. I mean, he was doing some tweeting yesterday, answering questions and stuff. Maybe WhoScored can conduct a tweet to him, and we'll see if he comes back to us. We'll move on to our next segment now, which is top-rated teams, and I believe you've got your top 10 rankings, Jonathan. Am I correct?
Have I?
Maybe not.
I didn't know anything about this. What is this, sorry?
Well, it says in my script in front of me, Jonathan to rank the top 10 teams at the tournament so far and compare to WhoScored rankings.
Oh, okay. Give me 2 minutes.
Have a little think. Have a little think. That's no problem.
Time now for our next segment, and Jonathan has ranked his top 10 teams of the tournament so far, and we're going to see how that stacks up against the Who Scored top 10. So do you want to rattle off your top 10 first, Jonathan?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's taken a huge amount of time and effort to
research is paramount for those things.
Yeah, and to try and balance various factors. I mean, there's only one of these I'm really happy with, but Italy clearly have been the best team so far.
Yep.
Whether they can, the one thing I'd say is this 30-game unbeaten run. In that time, they've only played one side in the current FIFA top 15 in the world. Now, obviously, they are one of the top 15, so it's 14 teams. And that was a 0-0 draw against Portugal, which I think was the fourth game of that run, maybe the third game of that run. So there's still a slight centre to be tested. But they look like a club side. They press really well. They look good going forward. They haven't conceded the goal yet. So Italy, I think, by some margin, out in front. I've gone France second, largely because of potential rather than because of what they've necessarily done. I sort of feel they're playing within themselves. Obviously, 2 draws. I think the forward line hasn't quite been sorted out yet, but I just think they look incredibly difficult to beat. That you've got to get through that block, and that they have great attacking quality. Belgium third, great going forward, but rickety at the back. The Dutch fourth have been really good, but haven't really played very much. Spain fifth. I sort of feel none of their games have been representative. I think the first 2 games they probably should have won, and the third game Slovakia were absolutely dreadful. But they've made 13% more passes than any other team in the tournament so far, and I think they've had more presses in the final third than the other teams so far. So good at keeping the ball, but also good at getting the ball back. Again, they haven't really been tested that much. Gone Denmark sixth. I know they just sort of scraped through by winning that last game, but I think, obviously the first game, very hard to judge anything from. And they did play very well against Belgium, particularly in the first half. So I think they look good in that back three. Having been a team that I sort of found a little bit dull in the Nations League, they're now a team that actually quite excite me, which is a nice transformation. Doesn't necessarily mean they'll go further, but I think good to watch. England seventh. I think keeping 3 clean sheets, however bored people may be by it, is an achievement. Whether it's a meaningful achievement, we won't find out till they play till they play Germany. But yeah, I think Southgate's job is to win the tournament. It's not to be popular. He's not going for election. Portugal eighth. I think they've been a lot poorer than they were 5 years. Well, actually, they're pretty poor 5 years ago at this stage, but they've been a lot poorer than they ought to be. And the way their defence is exposed by Germany, I think, would cause worries. But yeah, their midfield should be better than it is, and they've got Ronaldo who does score goals, even if he is counterproductive elsewhere. So I think for all the problems they've had defensively, I still would have them in the top 8. Germany ninth. Great going forward, absolutely chaotic elsewhere. I say great going forward, maybe they're not even great going forward. They're great going forward in one game. But just, great players, significantly less than some of their part. And then 10th, I've gone Wales, but it could have been 2 or 3 teams. But I think Wales have played better than I expected. I thought they were really good in that Turkey game. And the link up with Bale and Ramsey has been really good. Plus, we mentioned Ward and Roden. Have done very well. So that's my top 10. Italy, France, Belgium, Netherlands, Spain, Denmark, England, Portugal, Germany, Wales.
How does that stack up, Martin?
Different.
Any the same?
Belgium are third, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Belgium.
Get in.
Pretty sure that's it. But yeah. Where was Spain?
Fifth.
Close. They're quite different. Obviously, it's worth pointing out WhoScored's ratings are all statistical, so they don't take into account the factors that the eye test will, or that Jonathan certainly will, in terms of the teams that you face, tactical sort of elements of it. It's all about statistical performance. So, yeah, the team that's top that will certainly surprise, because it isn't Italy. Italy are second in ours. There's actually only 0.02 between the top three. So the top is actually Netherlands with 6.95. And like I said, it doesn't take into account the teams that you face. And we've said plenty of times that they haven't really faced anyone so far, but they have been very strong, certainly in attack. Bit wobbly in defence in that first game, but they didn't have their best defender, Van Dijk's their best defender, but their best available defender for that first game. Since he's come back in, they've looked pretty solid. So it's Netherlands, Italy, Belgium, top three. Then it's Spain, just massively boosted by that 5-0, always gonna boost them up. They weren't even in the top 10 before that. England in fifth. Worth pointing out, England as well, they've probably been, in terms of their rating, their level across the 3 games, they've probably been, along with Italy, the most consistent team so far in our ratings. Then Sweden in sixth, who've been solid. Slightly surprised they didn't make Jonathan's list after. I know he spent a lot of time sort of researching that. Didn't put Sweden in, but yeah, Sweden sixth. Wales seventh. France all the way down in eighth for us. Interestingly as well, they're the only team in our top 10 who've got progressively worse with every game in our ratings. Who actually got a worse rating against Portugal last night than they did against Hungary. Switzerland in ninth, which I think is fair. I thought they played well against Wales. They'll feel hard done by in that game. Obviously, completely outclassed by Italy, but then looked very dangerous against Turkey, as every team did. And Portugal just scraping in 10th. So yeah, like I said, Italy and England sort of the most consistent of those. Worth pointing out, there's 2 teams that have improved with every game, and that's the Netherlands and Sweden. So those teams may be coming into it sort of improving at a nice rate coming into the knockout phase.
So you had Sweden and Switzerland in there ahead of Denmark and Germany? Is that right?
Yeah, Denmark just missed out. Was that first game? I think they were 11th. Germany are way down in ours. I think they're actually, in our ratings, they're actually the lowest rated team to have progressed to the last 16. So yeah, not there. So
yeah, I mean, maybe I've kind of been swayed
I'd say
by
some big nation bias in there potentially.
Possibly swayed by the knowledge of what they can do.
Yeah,
well, it's a big player bias rather than big name.
Yeah,
I mean, obviously big nation as well, but yeah, you look at Kimmich and Havertz and you think what they should be capable of if they had a proper coach.
Yeah.
I mean, Sweden were the one who really challenged with Wales.
Mm-hmm.
But I've just been, I mean, and I guess you should give them credit for the way they defended against Spain.
Yeah.
But I've just had to watch them. And this hasn't been pleasant.
Sam, thanks ever so much for joining us. How did you enjoy the group stage?
Oh, I think it really hotted up, didn't it, towards the end? A lot of people were a little bit critical about the 4 third best placed teams going through, but it certainly provided some exciting drama. I felt a bit sorry for the Hungarian players and drawn in the group of death and they get that close to going through. Certainly painful for them, but we didn't see too many shocks, did we, in terms of big teams going out? And it's going to really tee up nicely, I think, now for the knockout stages, and everything just goes up a level.
Yeah, we nearly saw a big team go up, but unfortunately now they're up against England in the next round, but we'll come on to that in a later show. I want to talk to you today about player of the tournament, Sam. How's that market shaping up?
It's a fun little market, this, and it's certainly had lots of twists and turns already. There was a few names that I thought would be up there. Now, right now, after his goal-scoring exploits, Cristiano Ronaldo is co-favourite 8-1 with Kevin De Bruyne. De Bruyne hasn't featured exactly in every single minute of the tournament, but as soon as he has, he's made an impact. I think that's a really big feature. Obviously, it's going to be very interesting to see between those teams who can go further. Also got Kylian Mbappe in there, 8-1. I think had that goal that he scored in the group stages stood, remarkable effort. I think he'd have been probably outright favourite. But defensive and midfielders do have a fairly decent record in this market. N'Golo Kante next in at 10-1, ever popular, ever present for France. Lukaku's in there at 12-1. At the bigger prices, I must say, I think if the Dutch can go far, I think Wijnaldum might be worth a shout at 16s. Obviously, getting to score a few more goals than he would do for Liverpool, playing in a more advanced role for the Dutch side. He's an interesting price, I think, in there. And then much bigger the rest. Interestingly, if you want to try and back an English player, you've got to go down to the likes of Raheem Sterling at 25-1 before you'll find anyone that you can get involved in, and probably suggest the defensive nature of England and the chopping and changing the team means that we haven't got too many players at the shorter prices. Jack Grealish, if you think he's going to drag England to the final, kicking and screaming, he's 33-1.
Martin, how does that shape up with what we're saying at WhoScored.com? What are the top 10 players looking like there?
Yeah, so the top end of the market looks very similar. Our top-rated player is Kevin De Bruyne, and that's despite, like Sam says, he's only played 1.5 games out of 3, but he's been remarkable in his time on the pitch. So he's our sort of leader by quite a distance, actually, with an 8.84, which is a crazy rating, really. And then Cristiano Ronaldo is second. So those two obviously joint top in the odds. Mbappe is nowhere to be seen in our ratings. That's he'd need to have an outstanding knockout phase, I think, to get that. I don't see any value in that price whatsoever. But interestingly, Sam brought him up. Jorginho Wijnaldum, he's 8th currently in our ratings, but it's very congested between sort of 3rd and 8th. Frankie de Jong is actually 3rd, which is an interesting one. I think he's out at 40-1. I think I checked that yesterday. He was 40-1. So that might be interesting, but obviously he doesn't score the goals, whereas Wijnaldum does for his country. So we looked at it. We thought Wijnaldum looks a good price. They've got a good side of the draw. Could get to the semi-finals possibly. Denmark, it looks like, might be their game in the quarterfinals, or Wales. So yeah, they've got a decent chance of getting to the semis. And Wijnaldum was 16-1. We've got that boosted by BetVictor to 25-1. So a really nice price.
I can't believe we've let you do it. 25-1 seems huge, but that's just my opinion. Obviously, the traders quite keen to try and take him on, but I think in that Dutch side that play quite exciting football in comparison to some of the other teams at the tournament, I definitely think that's worth a squeak.
So yeah, there's a few Dutch players. Like I said, Frankie de Jong's 3rd. Memphis Depay is 5th as well. He's worth considering if he can get a few more goals. The only player in our top 10 ratings that's now crashed out is Lewandowski. After last night, he had a great game. He's 9th in our ratings, but no chance for him, obviously. Locatelli and Immobile are the two from Italy, who are obviously many people's favourites now. So they're worth considering as well, I think.
I've had a real long shot, Sam. I've backed Verratti on BetVictor. I just think obviously he's only played 1 game so far, but I think if he's fit, he plays every game. They could easily go all the way to the final. I think he's their best player. I've had that at 66-1. I think that's a decent long shot.
Yeah, I think if you can get a player from a squad that you think are going to go far, you've got the opportunity to improve. I always think with these kind of markets, as important as the group stages are, let's be honest, you need someone that's going to be getting to the final, basically. That seems to be the long and short of it. And or at least the semis to give you a bit of interest going that bit further, because frankly, who's going to remember the goals or the action from the first match day when you've got several more games after that to come? So yeah, I definitely think that's a good approach, and I wish you the best of luck with your outsider at 66-1.
Thank you very much, Sam, and thanks for joining us today to have a chat. We're going to finish this episode with predictions take 2. I'm going to be honest, I can't even remember what kind of predictions I was making at the start of the tournament. It feels like a long time ago now, but I'm sure I'll pick it up as we go through.
We certainly all went for France to win, didn't we? So interesting to see if that's still the case.
I'm sticking with that. I'll stick with France. I don't really like changing things too much, but I still look at them as being the best team. Not to watch so far, but I think they are the best team. So I'm going to stick with France. There's no reason to take them out in my eyes. I'm going to go on record and say I've mapped everything out, and I think there's only 5 teams that are capable of getting to the final. So that's France, Italy, Denmark, England / Germany. It's going to be 2 of those 5 in the final. Jonathan, who have you got down as winners?
Well, I think whoever wins the semi-final in the first semi-final, which I think should be France-Italy. So yeah, you would assume that it'll be the first quarter will be Belgium-Italy, the second will be France-Spain, then Sweden-Germany or England, and then Netherlands-Denmark.
Yeah.
Which gives you the second semi will be Netherlands v. I mean, basically the bottom half of the draw is crap.
Yeah. It looks pretty good for England now, to be fair. After if they can get through
Germany, yeah. And this is and as you're saying that Germany are the worst team to get through, so they've really benefited by coming top of the group. So yeah, England Netherlands semi perhaps, or Germany Netherlands semi. I mean, Germany Netherlands will be great, and then France Italy, and I still think France, but I'd strongly favour whoever wins that first semi, who also have the extra day of rest before the final, if that makes any difference.
Yeah, I'll go. I'm gonna, just to make it a little bit more interesting, I will go with Italy. just because, no great insight. They're playing the best football at the tournament. Like, I think Jonathan makes a really good point. They're playing like a club side, and they're the only team that are doing that.
The only thing I'd say, and this is a slightly kind of sort of law of averages argument, but no team ever wins a tournament by winning every game.
Mm-hmm.
And so what England has done cleverly is not win every game.
What I would say as well, that a really important goal is that Victor Claesson winner for Sweden, because that made Sweden top the group, didn't it? In terms of England's side of the draw, that would have been Spain, were it not for that injury time goal. So that's really opened it up on paper, at least, for England to have a chance, and certainly Germany as well. I think that is the game, isn't it? The round of 16 game that's really a toss of the coin. I think the others, there's probably, if not a clear favourite, then certainly a favourite. England, Germany, I think it will just be evens, basically.
Right. Moving on. Player of the tournament. I think I might have initially picked De Bruyne. I'm going to now go. This is, if you've watched the Bet Victor section, you'll know that I've had a little flutter on Verratti. So if I've got France down as winners, if Italy do knock France out, then at least with the player of the tournament, I've got a player that might be playing in the final, which I think gives me a good chance. So I'm going to go Verratti, 66-1 shot with Bet Victor, but I think he's going to be really important if Italy are going to get to the final, and he's a lovely, lovely footballer to watch. Who have you got for, Jonathan?
Well, if France win that semi, I know it doesn't always happen, but I'm assuming that player of the tournament will come from the winners, or certainly a finalist. Yeah. And even though he ended up not making my best team so far, I think Pogba has been the best French player so far. Nice. So, and also he's the type of player who wins best player awards. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, Jorginho has been brilliant, but he's not the sort of player who catches the eye. So yeah, let's say Pogba, and let's see Graham Souness explode. It's not Billy Gilmore, is it, Graham?
he's still buzzing from that 0-0, Graham. Absolutely buzzing. Martin?
Yeah, I agree with Jonathan. I'm going to go for Paul Pogba, just because, especially in terms of value. I think he's still, in terms of France players, he's still behind Mbappe and Kante in the odds. Completely agree. I think Pogba's been the star for France so far. I think ifs, buts and maybes, but if he'd scored that goal against Portugal, that great save from Patricio, he'd probably be outright leader in this market. So it is fine margins. That was just that. I was willing that to go in more for the skill before that. The stud roll, incredible.
I was willing it to go in just because I wanted England to play Hungary. I was sort of imagining just the amount of work and the money I'd make of an England-Hungary rematch.
But yeah,
let's do it for Billy Wright.
I think Pogba's a great value, but also we should say, like we recorded before, we've got Wijnaldum at boosted from 16 to 25-1. If you look at that side of the draw, Netherlands could conceivably make the final. If he gets a couple more goals, he's got 3 already. If Netherlands make the final and Wijnaldum scores 5 goals, 25-1 certainly looks a really nice price for him. So yeah, that's our sort of boosted price, and I think it's a very good one.
Finish with the Golden Boot. I think, did we all pick Lukaku for the Golden Boot? I think
I might have picked Mbappe, but
yeah,
I'd like to switch on. Get on the Lukaku horse.
You'd have Lukaku now still?
I think so. I mean, because I think there's a decent chance Portugal go out in the last 16. And Lukaku's he's only 2 goals behind Ronaldo.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Belgium win that 2-0, Lukaku scores twice, he's level and he's got 3 games in hand.
I'm worried about that game. I can't pick who's going to go out in that one. Martin, are you sticking with Lukaku?
Yeah, my inkling is that Belgium will sneak it, but with the caveat that I also think Ronaldo will score. So I would probably lean with Ronaldo, because I think there's a decent chance he stays 2 goals ahead at least after that game. And then Belgium's draw after that isn't easy. I think they're likely to play Italy after that. So tough. So yeah, I think I'd just lean towards Ronaldo, but not great value in the market, in my opinion.
No, I can't call that game. I can't call who's going to go through. So I'm just going to go for a wild long shot for the Golden Boot. I actually had a bet on him pre-tournament as well. I'm just going to go for Benzema to go on a scoring spree.
Well, I mean, the other, just looking at the draw, the other person who I think has a decent chance is Depay, on the same logic as Wijnaldum. Given the Dutch could get to the final without really having to play anybody that brilliant, and he's clearly capable of scoring plenty of goals. So, what price is Depay? Have you got that there?
I think I don't know the exact price, but he's sort of 5th or 6th favourite. I think he's around 10-1, maybe.
Maybe that's a bit short, but yeah, okay.
Cool. Yeah. That does us, I think, for this episode. So a nice little review of the group stage here, a bonus episode. Do watch out for our preview of the last 16 that will be coming up in the next 24 hours or so as well. We're going to record that straight after this one. So yeah, watch out for that. Don't forget to subscribe, like, all that jazz to know when our podcast is coming out before anyone else. Thanks to Jonathan and Martin for joining me. And yeah, watch out for that next episode.